Hello everyone, Edwin Leonard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about astrological transits. Now, astrological transit is when a planet or asteroid or just an astrological energy, when it makes an angle or aspect to a fixed or set point in one's natal chart. And it could also apply to other charts, which I'll get to in a minute, but it's used very strongly and prominently in natal charts. Now, moving energy, it's that moving energy of astrological energy, whether it be an asteroid, a planet, or even a mathematical point like the North Node. It's the moving energy of that astrological energy relative to the natal chart. Now, the time of the transit will vary depending on that particular orbit of that energy of that planet or that asteroid, or another example is the North Node. Now, the moon on average would stay in a house for 2 1/3 days. And now if you take an outer planet, say Uranus may stay in a house for about 7 years, approximately 7 years on average, because it takes Uranus 7 years on average to go through a zodiac sign. And a zodiac sign is 30 degrees and an average house is 30 degrees. So that's how I would explain that. Now, also when you look at this now, transits can be used strongly in predictive astrology along with progressions. Transits can impact other charts as well, such as the progressed chart or solar return chart. Now, transits may bring about spontaneous or extemporaneous events. Now, Jupiter transiting the 8th house, for example, may bring about money for as far as inheritance, perhaps. It could be something that would bring about something fortuitous connected with astrology or others' resources. It may be an unexpected tax refund somebody may get, or some tax break that they didn't anticipate. Now, another example is, let's say that Uranus is transiting someone's 4th house. This may indicate problems perhaps with something electronic in the house, such as home computer or other electronic devices, or it can also indicate some general tumult and chaos in the home, perhaps during this period. Also, it's important to look at transits and aspect. Now, let's say, for example, somebody has transiting Mars squaring their natal moon. This may indicate some volatile or angry, emotional, acrimonious outbursts in this period. Relationships may be contentious. It may be harder to control one's anger during this particular period, and it might be hard to channel that anger more constructively. Now, sometimes people will use transits as a way to ascertain when a favorable or auspicious time is to do something. For example, let's say Jupiter is transiting someone's 5th house. Perhaps this may be more auspicious time for pregnancy, and especially if it's making predominantly good aspects. Now, for me, the way I see it, for example, trying to that is the ascendant may help, because the ascendant is connected strongly with one's physical body, and this might be more fortuitous for health during this period of that pregnancy. And it also helps if Jupiter is in a fertile sign such as Cancer, so that could be, and that's another thing to add to this. Now, also a thing to look at is with transits as far as applying and separating aspects. Now, let's say applying aspect may be more intense than the separating one. Applying aspect is when a planet or some astrological body, like an asteroid or even the North Node, node, of course, is the mathematical point, as I stated before. It's when one of these things may be approaching or getting close to that particular point in that planet, the ascendant, midheaven, or what have you in your natal chart, and it's getting close to making that precise or exact aspect. It's approaching that point. And The separating aspect is after it hits that point. And often when you look at a separating, when we look at applying aspect, that could indicate between the applying and the exact aspect is when an event may have occurred. And when it separates, let's say if it was something like like something that indicated something negative, like let's say for example that somebody had transiting Mars making a square to their natal midheaven. Let's say Mars is in the 7th, transiting Mars in the 7th house. Let's say it's at that point where it's exact, or it's close to being an exact aspect, and it is applying. Now, it could indicate perhaps that maybe an acrimonious or combative experience, perhaps with somebody in authority or supervisor, and it might even be connected with something where it's legal being in the 7th house, say, if Mars is in the 7th. But once it separates from that point, it could indicate that matter has already taken place. So that is an example to look at. And let's say for another example, let's say that somebody has transiting Uranus approaching a conjunction to their natal Mercury. Let's say, for example, somebody has their natal Mercury at, let's say, 8 degrees Aquarius, right? And let's say that transiting Uranus is at 7 degrees Aquarius. Well, this could indicate at that time, being that it's applying, it's approaching that exact conjunction, well, it could indicate that that person at that time maybe has some innovative or ingenious ideas or thoughts, and maybe they try to bring this out into the open, and it really could be something where that idea might actually hit them at that particular point in time. That's where that energy is the strongest. And when it makes the separating aspect, it could be after that idea had already taken place, or that particular event. It could indicate that maybe even through writing that maybe this person wanted to communicate some kind of some idea or concept that they wanted to get out in the open, and that's for example, what that could indicate. So that is something to look at. And just because if something separates, like for example, if you have a separating aspect, and say that, let's say for example that you had that Mercury that the transiting Uranus was at a later degree than that Mercury, and it was a separating aspect, it wouldn't necessarily mean that that person wouldn't have that, perhaps that maybe those ingenious ideas or thoughts in that period, but it indicates that really it may not be as strong or as intense as it was when it made that exact conjunction. The separating generally won't be as strong as opposed to when it is applying or exact. So that is something to look at as far as applying and separating transits and aspects. So those are some things as far as aspect, transiting planets or energies hitting your natal points. So anyway, and that's basically how the applying and separating aspects do work. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrological transits, and stay tuned next time where I'll be dissertating and talking about the Sun transiting the 1st house in a natal chart. 2 things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.